I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. All right. Hey, everyone. I moderated that panel I was talking about. I did forget the word perception. I said perspective instead. So I'll be thinking about that every night. But no, it went well. It's always so fun to do kind of an in-person live panel moderation. But you don't get the editing afterwards like I do with a podcast because I did bully Nick into coming again. He is here. I told him if he supports gay people, he would come help us. The listeners also, by popular demand, the listeners want more Nick content. The listener is I. It is me. I want more Nick content. Maybe I'll get him a mic next time. All right. So I am sitting across from the Patti Hearn, the executive director for Seattle Pride. Hi, Patti.
Hi.
I'm so excited to have you here. I'm surprised we're in Pioneer Square because I thought, Capitol Hill, gay, Pride.
Yeah, well, I think that is how it is now, but the actual original gay neighborhood in Seattle is Pioneer Square.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, our last episode, we talked all about Pioneer Square, so it was fun to come back and see a different building. I did wear my Pride shirt. It says, "Kiss More Girls."
Good idea.
And I have my bracelet. I almost wore a hat that said Dyke, but I was like, it might be too much.
Altogether is a lot.
Yeah, altogether it might be too much. Okay, so a little bit about you, Patti. You've worked as the executive director for about 2 years. And prior to that, you founded a consulting company. You were an adjunct professor for a Seattle Film Institute. And mostly you have a long history of working in leadership in education. So you were the founder of the Lake Washington Girls Middle School and were the head of that school and worked at the Seattle School of Boys. So a long history there. You have your master's in education and you've served on several boards, including the Bush School. So a lot. You've done a lot.
Yeah, well, I've been around.
You've been around.
Yeah.
Well, I want to start off with, like I said, you've mostly worked in education. Why this switch over to Seattle Pride? What drew you there?
Yeah, I think, for me, education was, it was my life's work for that, 2+ decades. And it was really important to me to make sure that kids had spaces to be where they could be validated and loved and cared for and grow and be themselves. And the leap to working in Pride actually isn't very far when I think of those things that were really important to me, because that's what Pride is about. It's about making sure that people feel welcome and included and have a sense of belonging, that they can be themselves. So It was a short jump, actually.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk all about Pride today. We do have 4 stories. So the first one is similar to what I did last episode, is we're really just going to get a Seattle Pride update because obviously it's Pride Month and it's all coming up. So we've got a lot to talk about. And then we'll discuss Molly Moon is opening. It did open a waterfront location. I was actually able to get a hold of Molly and she had a few things to say. So we'll hear from her directly. Then we'll discuss Seattle U and Cornish are combining. Cornish College of the Arts. And I also was able to get a hold of the interim president to get a little take from her on how that merger went. And lastly, we'll discuss Acumatica is acquired by private equity. Drink every time private equity buys something in Seattle. Okay, so we're going to start off with Pride. No article again. I'm just going to chat with you about it. So give us a sense of the size and scope of Pride as it compares to both other cities and prior years in Seattle. What are we looking at?
Yeah, so our big event at the end of the month is the Pride Parade. That's the same day. That is the day that honors the Stonewall Rebellion, which is the last Sunday in June every year. We share that date with some of the other big cities in the country. So New York, San Francisco. We all are in the big city date. Some smaller cities celebrate off that schedule so that they're not in competition. So in that way, we think we're one of the big kids. And then also it is a pretty big parade. It is the largest single day event in the state of Washington, and it's the biggest parade.
How many? Do you have a sense of how many people?
Yeah, 300,000 people or so are at the parade along 4th Avenue.
Okay. And we're up there with some of the other big cities.
Yeah,
okay.
Pretty close. And that's the parade itself. Of course, there's all kinds of things happening all over the city. So there's the parade that goes through downtown, and then there's Pride Fest at Seattle Center, and then there are other smaller events and all of Capitol Hill and the festivals that happen there as well.
And you've got Pride in the Park. Well, this episode comes out Sunday, so it would have just happened Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah. So congrats on that.
Thanks.
So what's new and different about Pride this year? What can we expect?
I think in some ways it will feel like it has before. It will feel celebratory and exciting and full of rainbows and glitter and all of the things that we know happen at Pride. And we're all also operating in this shadow of the current administration and threats to our community and people, trying to advocate for their right to exist. So at the same time that we're holding all of that joy and celebration, we're holding all of that tension and fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the Pride Parade, so I follow this one super right-wing podcaster, and it is challenging to listen to, but I think it's important to understand like what conversations are being had outside of my circles. And something I was hearing from that side is questioning whether the Pride Parade is appropriate for children, specifically some of the acts like there's like a leather group and things like that. What would you say to some of those people that make those comments?
I'm a parent, right? And an educator. So I think the first thing I think about and hear when I hear people wondering about if something's appropriate for kids is what kind of conversations are you having with your kids? Because my perspective is they're exposed to all kinds of things through various media. And lots of them are things I definitely don't want them to experience. Like the amount of violence that's available via their telephones or television is intense. And I hope that they never experience that, right? But it's my job to talk to them about it, help them understand that that's a thing in the world. And that's also true for explicit content, sexual content, right? Like that's out there, it's available. And like, what do I want them to understand about it or not understand, right? It's my role to see if they're developmentally ready for it. So I think the parade has all kinds of things, and certainly some part of it in the community, there are people who show up and yes, the leather contingent, and I can see that someone might not want their kids to like really be in that. But as it walks by, you could have a brief conversation with your kid about what that is or not, or they might not even notice realistically because there's a lot going on.
Like you can choose, like, it's a sexual kink, but we don't need to tell kids that. We can say they're just having fun dressing up in different costumes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't have to give them all the details.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I see what you're saying is that comes up in all parts of life. You can't shield them from everything. Mm-hmm. I understand that. Okay, I want to shift a little bit over more into the business side of this parade. So things like this can only happen with massive sponsors and a lot of corporate sponsors. For those that don't know, in 2022, it made headlines that Amazon wanted to be a sponsor, $100,000 sponsor for the Pride Parade, but they wanted to be what's called a naming sponsor, and I deal with that. In my world, a lot is essentially be Seattle Pride brought to you by Amazon or Amazon's Seattle Pride. Basically, they're in the title and they're always in the title. And at that time in 2022, I want to make clear, you weren't in leadership, but Seattle Pride decided not to take that sponsorship. And I think it was a big hit. $100,000 is a lot of money, but they chose not to because they didn't want Amazon's name on there, knowing that Amazon had at that time donated to organizations that did not support LGBTQ communities. So first of all, anything you want to say on that particular incident, even though I know you weren't here, and can you talk to me about how you're handling corporate sponsorships moving forward?
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit. Right. I wasn't here. I heard the story as I came in into the organization. And I spoke not only with people who were at Seattle Pride, but also with some representatives from Amazon, like at an ERG event, an employee resource group event. So it was important for me to understand what had happened. And I knew that it was hard on them. And I think it had a lot of press that wasn't great. And it wasn't like it didn't turn out super well. I think it was really challenging. I think the thing for me that's different now, or maybe different now, how I'm thinking about things is we might have a conversation with a company that wants to sponsor, is interested in supporting us, and we're grateful for that, and we think that's great. And we want those companies to have values that are aligned. And so sometimes that means, okay, let's talk more about that, and are your values aligned, and let's talk about this statement you made, or DEI rollback, for example, and like more recently. And those are conversations. And I've had this year, just this sponsorship season for this year's parade, we had multiple conversations with multiple companies about where they are in their DEI policies, where they are in supporting their employees, and if that felt like a match. And for some of them, it was like not a match. And it was like, okay, then we'll talk to you later. Thank you, right? Yeah. But in all of those cases, I'm speaking to humans who are doing a job in a company who really do want to do the right thing. I don't think they're not trying to do anything bad, right? They're dealing with all kinds of policy, bureaucracy, finances, as we all are. For me, I just wanted to have a conversation that was solutions-oriented, that was maintaining relationships, and that was real about what are the challenges we see and what are the challenges they see.
Yeah. So I guess in those conversations, can you share how many corporations have maybe dropped out, or how are we comparing to previous years? I know a lot of companies are backing out nationwide.
Yeah, I think we had 82 sponsors through all the levels in 24, and it's under 65 this year.
From 82 to under 65.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how does that play out financially? I mean, that's a significant amount.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant amount. It's probably, I think we'll end up at about 200,000 less than we would have than we expected, than we budgeted for related to sponsorships.
Yeah. So Patti, you made the decision. I thought it was interesting. I saw in headlines, Seattle Pride is short $350,000 from their goal. And I think when you're working in fundraising or an event or something, you don't really want people to know how short you are from this goal.
Yeah.
And I personally thought it was kind of genius to announce it, because you're kind of airing your dirty laundry, but you're also saying like, hey, this is real. And you're giving these other companies that maybe aren't on your radar or didn't think about it being like, oh, we can step up. Yeah. So talk to me about that decision to announce it and how that worked for you.
Yeah, it goes against like what every development director would ever do. To do. Yeah. Everybody wants to support a winner. We're like, hi, we're in trouble.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we were just really just trying to put it out there. It's real. It's a real issue, a real challenge. And I didn't see any way to navigate it without talking with the community about it, right? Mm-hmm. So it just became like, we gotta say what it is, right? And I think I led with like, we're going to get to the point. Not very well thought out maybe, but it was like, we're just going to talk about it. This is the thing that's happening. Mm-hmm. And part of what we're trying to do is make sure that companies understand that, although a lot of them, I think, were nervous about what executive order they were supposed to abide by, even if it didn't really apply to them. Mm. And so one of the things we were trying to do was like, do you really have to, or can you still support, right? And you could see the arc of companies kind of coming back around a little bit and calming down. Mm-hmm. And then also it was appealing to individuals in the community. And if we think of what Pride was in 1974 in Seattle, which was the first one, and even, only 20 years ago, much of it was funded just by people giving what they could. Mm-hmm. And that's a model that, that isn't maybe sustainable when it costs $1.5 million, but
is that what it costs?
The annual budget is about
an annual budget.
Yeah,
okay.
But most of that is the events, right?
Right.
So, that's not entirely possible, probably. We do need the corporate sponsors, but we were thinking, like, how can we shift the balance a little so that it is more community supported and funded and run?
Yeah. So kind of, do you get money from the state at all? Any government money?
No.
So it's all corporate sponsorships and individual donors?
And grants.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kind of shifting the percentage of what comes from where. And so it was successful. You feel like I guess we're not totally at the number that we needed to hit, but I think you got some more from it, right?
Yeah. And we did. We definitely had more individuals come forward, which was really, really great. Yeah. And then grants were something we were working on, mm-hmm. and those are coming in and not coming in depending on,
Yeah. I had a friend that got a grant, but she's a woman-owned business, and luckily it came through, but there was a moment where she wasn't sure she was going to get it.
Right.
Okay. So moving forward, what are your goals? I guess you've been here 2 years. You've got, I guess 2 under your belt or 1 under your belt?
2.
2 under your belt.
I mean, almost 2. Will be 2.
Yeah. What are your goals kind of in the next, 5 years? What do you want for Seattle Pride?
Yeah. I think this leaning into the community and helping people understand what we do is really huge for the organization. I think that people don't really know what Seattle Pride is. Sometimes they're like, oh yeah, you do the parade, but they don't know anything else about what the organization does. And there are quite a few things related to arts and culture and youth programming. Mm-hmm. So some of that work I think is really important. I think there's really important work to be done for queer people and trans people who work in nonprofits particularly. I think there's significant support for people who work in business. Mm-hmm. There's not as much for nonprofit work. And so I'm interested in thinking about leadership and collaboration and building community in those spaces so that people have resources to go to. So those are kind of top of mind for me in the next few years.
Yeah. And I want to give you a chance to talk about the theme for this year. Can you share more about how that came to be and what it means to you?
Yeah. The theme this year is louder. So we're developing the theme in the fall. So before the election, and that I think it's important to know, like we knew we were going to be in a different space, but we didn't necessarily know what it was going to be like exactly. Mm-hmm. So, but we were thinking about like, we need to be thinking about this in terms of louder celebration and also louder protest. So it's definitely 2 sides of that coin, and has we kind of came to the design with the feeling of like we wanted to have a little bit more punk rock. Like last year was very 70s and flowery because it was the 50th anniversary and we were bringing forward like the mid 70s thing. And so this year we were trying to go a little bit more like protest poster feel. So the shirts are black and white and not very.
You're wearing these right now.
Yeah, no rainbows on the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we worked with a design company called Millie, who were really wonderful, and went through that process and feel good about it.
Cool. Yeah, I like it. Louder for everybody listening. All right, we're going to move into our next story, which is Molly Moon opens a new waterfront location. I did a 5K on the waterfront. I mentioned that for no reason other than I just want to tell people I did a 5K.
Congratulations.
I did. I ran by the Molly Moon's waterfront location. And what stood out to me is the unique shape and design of it. It doesn't look like any of her other stores, nothing like I had seen before. And it's super small. It's 350 square feet. But she made it work and it looks really cool. I was able to get a hold of her. So I asked her, the waterfront chose one business out of 47 businesses. They basically put out an RFP, said who wants to be in this space. Molly Moon applied along with 46 other businesses. And I asked her why she thinks that she won and she stood out.
I think Molly Moon's is a really iconic business in Seattle. You know, we've been around for 17 years. We play a big role in the community. We provide really life-changing jobs. We don't just provide a paycheck. We provide an opportunity to create a career in food and beverage. You don't have to go to college to get a whole compensation package that can support you, support a family, support a career that feels fulfilling and like you can build a life here in Seattle. And we're really proud of that. We care a lot about the role our shops play in neighborhoods. And I think the people at Friends of the Waterfront, when they were choosing a community business, they were looking at like, you know, who's going to be a real community player in this space. So we were really, really excited to be chosen.
Anything you want to say to that or to Molly Moon opening the store?
Well, I love ice cream, so I'm really glad because it's right down the street from our office and I'm excited to go. I think that's great. I've been able to sort of, see her career grow. I've lived in Seattle a long time. So I remember when it was just the one shop and now it's kind of everywhere. And I love that she thinks about where she wants to be and which community she wants to serve. And so that's great.
Yeah. It's her 10th location. I asked, so typically she opens a store every 2 years, but she is opening a lot more lately. She's got one coming up in West Seattle and one in Kirkland. So I asked her to share a little bit about why she's accelerating that growth. So we'll hear from her.
One is that our customers have been begging for us to come to a few neighborhoods, and we wanted to answer that call when we found great real estate opportunities. Another one is just like me personally, Molly Moon, I felt compelled and like a little bit ambitious and like I wanted to do more at a certain point, and all these opportunities came available and I was like, you know what, I'm ready for it. So I went for it. I have felt a little bit overwhelmed, like trying to open 3 stores in a year. We did the waterfront, we're doing West Seattle, we're about to start on Kirkland. So it's been a lot for our little team. We have about 10 people, 12 people that work in our HQ. We're excited to be kind of growing aggressively and it feels good.
Yeah, so we're really happy for her. Is she a part of the parade?
No.
Not yet,
but
Molly.
Like I said, Molly, I love the ice cream, so come on down. But we would love to have that in the parade.
I asked because I'm curious to know if you can share more of that process of getting people into the parade. It's different than sponsorship. They do pay to be a part of it, right?
Yeah, they do pay. So most of the time, an organization or a group or a company will just apply. It's like we send out the registration is open and people fill out a form basically and apply to be in, and then we approve them. And the payment is, dependent on your budget, except if you're a queer nonprofit, then it's free to march.
Oh, very cool. Have you turned anybody down?
I don't think so. If we got, the deadline passes, and so that way we turn people down, which is often very shocking for people, I think. And if we got
when's the deadline?
It was about like May.
Oh, it's already passed.
It's passed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's been passed. We often get people who are, it's June 15th and they want to register and they feel confused why they can't.
Yes, I know that world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. But I think Mostly, if we got above our number that we could handle in the length of the parade route that we have, then we would have to turn people down.
How many, what do you call them? Acts? I guess how many groups?
Contingents. We call them. There could be a better name, but that's what we have right now. 250-ish.
250-ish. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, we're going to move on to our next story, which is Seattle U and Cornish College of the Arts combining. So after over 100 years, Cornish is no longer an independent arts school. It's now part of the private school, Seattle University. This is what's called an asset contribution. And basically, Cornish is transferring everything over to Seattle U. It's going to be called, when people can still take Cornish classes, and it'll be Cornish College of the Arts at Seattle University when they register. To give you a sense of the size, Cornish is kind of around 450 students, and Seattle U is around 7,000. So it's a much, much bigger school. I've covered this in episodes a long time ago, but that was when they were starting the deal. Emily Parkhurst is a friend of mine. She's been on the podcast, and she, while she was founding and is founding her company Formidable, which I've talked about, on the side in her free time, she was the interim president of Cornish College of the Arts. So she was really instrumental in making this deal happen. So I asked her, why the merger to help mitigate the budget shortfall? What other options were you considering? So we'll hear from her.
There were a lot of options, but mergers were definitely at the top of our list. And that's because Cornish is like a lot of small colleges where it's just really hard to make things pencil with so few students. The business model's just really challenged, and you don't have that economy of scale that you get with a larger institution. So when we were looking around at our options, looking at a merger that would bring that economy of scale was really important to us, because we didn't just want to merge two struggling institutions. We wanted to merge with an organization that was strong and that was going to be able to provide us some stability. And our people and our students really deserved that. So we're very happy with this outcome.
And then I also wanted to hear from her, and Patti, I want to hear your take on this afterwards as well, but I wanted to know what were some of the challenges that she didn't expect going into this. So let's hear what came across for her.
The biggest challenge we had to deal with was all of the changes happening in Washington, D.C. Cornish is like all colleges regulated by the Department of Education. And if you've been following the news, you know that the Department of Education has had some serious cuts as well as massive leadership changes. And that provided a lot of challenges for us. First and foremost, we didn't even know if the people we were working with would still be working after those cuts were announced. And in a lot of cases, that was true. We lost our contacts at the Department of Education. So that presented a lot of challenges in communication. And we actually changed the nature of the deal so that we didn't have to have as much interaction with the Department of Education. It also allowed us to move much faster and merge these two institutions as quickly as we did. And so that has been a really good outcome.
So, Patti, like I said, you've got a lot of education background. Any initial thoughts on this merger?
My first thought about it was I can imagine that there was a lot of trepidation about losing the core for Cornish. I can imagine Cornish was like, oh, are we going to be able to hang on to who we are, right? So I think whenever you're merging organizations or you're doing some kind of alignment like that, I think people get really nervous that they're going to have to give something up, which probably to some degree they do, right? There are probably some things to grieve in there, as we do in change management. So I thought about that a little bit. And at the same time, I can totally see the value in the economy of scale and the sharing resources and collaborating in that way. And that's something that I think is really good and valuable, but you have to at the same time recognize that the change can be challenging.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned change management. It's gotten brought up in one other episode, in that it is a real thing, and like there's steps to be taken to have people adjust to big changes like that. And I'm sure you deal with that in your position. Having worked in the field for so long, what's like a key takeaway you've had from working in the education field?
Oh, wow. Well, so many. I think this is actually probably like any field, but I think in education, you can always ask yourself, like, what are we doing here? What's the reason? And it's always the students, like, or the kids if they're younger, but in Cornish and Seattle, UK, so they're older. But you'd always be saying, like, what do the students need, and making that drive every decision you make.
Yeah. And why did you start that girls' middle school?
Youth and exuberance. I don't know. I came across a group of families that was interested in it, and I was 26. And we just kind of went down the path and opened it. And it was great. And I think there were so many things I didn't know about what was going to be hard and amazing about it. And the youth part was just like, okay, great. Yeah, sure, I can do that. And it was great.
I was messaging with an old college professor and I was like, wait, how old were you when you were my professor? She's like 27. I go, what?
Right. Wait, what?
Because in my mind, I think I was 18. I thought she was so old and smart, and she was like smart and all that. But yeah, it's just
funny
when you're younger. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it is hard to see a school like Cornish struggle because I think the arts are struggling right now. Is there anything you want to say about the role of arts both in community and in education?
Yeah, I mean, I think of art as a tool for resistance, for sharing stories, for engendering compassion in people. You can see next to you, there's a writing contest flyer.
Yeah.
One of the things we have here is both an art contest and a writing contest. And what we're trying to do there is give, in this case, young people space to share their stories, feel validated, get that sense of belonging, right? So that people can see them and hear them and honor their existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. So did you start this or is this already?
Did.
You did.
Yeah.
Oh, and do you have other ones besides the writing contest coming up?
Yeah, there's an art contest that's running right now in collaboration with an organization called Free to Love, and it's FREE2LUV. So with an organization called Free to Love, and that is kids and people can submit art, and then there's an online gallery, and they're really focused on social emotional learning and belonging, and the art is sort of an extension of that work.
Very cool. I'm so glad Seattle Pride has you to come up with some of these new ideas.
Well, thanks.
One more question on this article before we move on, which is you had kind of talked about, you knew a little bit about schools working together on a project, and you mentioned that you did this with a construction project back in the middle school days, right?
Yeah. I did. Yeah. So I was in the school that I had been working at for years was in, we were a tenant of the Catholic Church, and our building was one of the unreinforced masonry buildings. There are many around Seattle. And it was really clear we could not stay there for much longer, probably. And so we started thinking about ways to move around that and figure out a long-term lease. And then another school just a few blocks away was in a very similar situation. And they acquired some land and said like, hey, maybe we should talk about putting these buildings together. And so we started having that conversation, and I did some research, and like really no one had done anything like that. There are schools that are co-located around the country, but no one had done a ground up construction. And a lot of people said that we were crazy, and then we did it anyway.
Isn't that the best?
Yes. Yeah. Funny because Graham Babu, who did the Molly Moons down at the waterfront, was our architect.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, they do some kind of like historic preservation work. Anyway, we built the building, and it was great. And it was 2 schools on one campus. So we shared a gym, we shared a lunchroom, that kind of thing, but separate spaces. They were in elementary school, we were middle school. And there was a lot in there about change management and growth and things being hard that we learned.
And what else happened in that?
Well, I mean, the other head of school and I got to know each other. And then a few years later, we got married.
I love it. I love it. So cute. Okay. Our last article is Acumatica bought by private equity. So Acumatica, if you're not familiar, is a Bellevue-based business management software company. And it was acquired for what is estimated to be $2 billion deal, but they haven't told us specifically. And this is with Vista Equity Partners, the private equity company. It was actually already previously acquired by a different private equity firm 6 years ago. So now it's just shifting hands to a new one. They don't anticipate any immediate headcount changes, which I feel like they always say, and they kind of sneak it in later, but that's my opinion. Other companies that this specific company has, or specific private equity company, Vista Equity Partners, has purchased that you might recognize is Smartsheet, Avalara, and Aptio, but they did later sell Aptio. So they're popular here in Seattle. Do you have any thoughts on this at first before I ask you my other questions?
I mean, not really. I'm like, I don't know. I'm glad that you are keeping your opinions about private equity so like under the radar.
Oh, you really can't tell my opinion on it, can you?
Yeah.
I'm not biased at all. I don't know if you know this, but I work for Avalara, so I really should keep my mouth shut if I want to keep getting paid. Okay, I want to use this opportunity to talk about leadership because I think with a company being bought by private equity, the decision to be bought by private equity, this all comes down to a decision by leadership. And you obviously founded this leadership consulting company. So I want to know from you, what do you think most people kind of get wrong about leadership?
Okay, I don't know what most people get wrong, really. Like, I'm sure there are lots of things we all get wrong all the time. But I guess the thing I would say, if I were advising someone what they should pay attention to, is the dance between knowing your goalposts, right? Like I was talking about before, what's your driver? What's the thing that drives your mission? What's your purpose? If it's in a school, it's kids. If it's at Seattle Pride, it's making sure that queer and trans people feel valid and belonged, that they have a sense of belonging. And also being willing to look at the strength in the room, like on your team, who's around, what they bring, letting people run with the things that they're good at and that they show up with, and getting your own leader ego out of the way, right? Like not wanting to be the person who came up with every idea and letting people run. And that is like, I use dance as the metaphor because you are always kind of back and forth. Like on one hand, you have to be able to know when to say, that's off the path. That's not where we're going, right? It's not working. And then also be like, oh, okay, well, sure. Let's try that, right? Let's improvise this part. So I think that's kind of hard to do. It's hard to do both, and it's hard to zoom in and out and back and forth from those things. But my experience, because of course I've been around long enough to have made mistakes, right? So like,
No.
right? It doesn't take long, actually. My experience is if you go too far in one direction, then you're lost, right? If you're just following what they're showing up with and what's shiny at the moment, then you're a mess, right? And if you're all locked into like, we can only do it this way, then you're also a mess. And so you have to find both.
Do you have an example recently with Pride where you feel like you made a good leadership decision, or I guess perhaps a mistake, but we can brag, or maybe a difficult leadership decision?
I mean, there's been so many difficult decisions. I guess I would say maybe if we like go back to that, like sharing the thing about having the financial deficit,
right,
was a sort of scary decision because it's like, okay, do we really want to go out there with that? And one thing that I did that I think that I feel good about is talked with the team that's here, right? Like, how does this feel for you? Are we saying the right thing? Are we sharing what we want to share? Does it feel authentic, right? Like getting that reflection in the moment so that I could feel a little more confident that we were on the right path.
Yeah, I like to have like a board of directors, like a personal board of directors, because oftentimes it's just me and I'm making a decision. Then I'll go to my friends. I'm like, wait, was that should I have done that? Is that the right thing? Okay. So speaking of leadership, I have to bring this up. I think this has gotten a lot of news coverage, but there was a protest at Cal Anderson Park. And for those unfamiliar, it's a very traditional queer park, a lot of queer events that happen there. It's very much known in Seattle. And there was I don't even know what to call the group, but seemingly anti-LGBTQ group, traditional values group. I'm not really sure what they're calling themselves. They hosted a protest, and then there were some anti-protesters, so people from kind of the LGBTQ community, and the police got involved, and it did seem to get violent from the videos. Well, I know you weren't there. I wasn't there, so I can't speak to that. But you made the decision. Seattle Pride did make a statement. So I want to hear from you, like, what was going through your head of whether you should make a statement or not, and what to put in that statement.
Yeah. The statement making is always super challenging, right? Because you have to decide which things are you going to make a statement about, and then what exactly do you want to say? And then, of course, there's the sense of urgency, right? Because
yes,
like it's over the weekend and we have to do it right now. None of that is my favorite, right? That urgency thing is often not great. Yeah. But that was real that weekend. I think, we decided to do it because it felt sort of like a double whammy. It was that the event was happening in Cal Anderson was really, it felt bad. It felt like, why of all the places and all of the places it could be, all of the parks in the city, why would it be Cal Anderson? That didn't feel good. That felt like in my most generous moment, it was a misguided decision. And then I think the interactions of the police with the counter protesters, you can see them. They're pretty intense. I mean, there are images of, women laying on the ground, definitely not fighting back and getting pepper sprayed. Yeah. And so it felt like it needed a response. And we have a relationship with the police. We are in conversations with them continually about their participation in our events, and then also in the way that there's that outside security for the parade, right? They manage the traffic, all of those things. So it's a relationship, and one of the things you have to do in a relationship is name behaviors that are difficult. Here I am as a teacher again. But like, let me reflect this to you, right? Like that needed to happen. And that was the crux of it, really.
Yeah. That right winger that I follow said something about it being a peaceful protest. And what I was thinking was like, maybe that's true, but your message is hate. So you can't expect it to be this peaceful moment when your message is full of hate. Yeah. So that was my thought. Yeah. Okay. why did I choose to end on that question? I'm not sure. So
can we go back to ice cream?
Yeah, let's bring it back. Okay, so the last question, you can choose. You can do both or one or the other. I'm not sure which one I like better yet, but one of them is, what do you do to get motivated when you don't feel like doing anything? And then the other one is, what's your hot take? So you can do one or both.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll blend them. We'll see. Okay.
My hot take is do your job.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought about this thing about what you do when you're having a hard time getting motivated, and this is again probably a reflection of my advanced age. I think I had a lot of years of like leaving it all on the floor, and I'm working and working and working, and I blood, sweat, and tears, all of it, and that is. Also, I think that's what we do in startups. It's what we do in nonprofits, right? It's what women do. It's what parents do. So at this point, I'm like, if I really don't want to do something, sometimes what I do is just not do it.
What's so funny, I don't know if you listened to the last episode, but I asked her, because some people were like, I listen to music, I do this. And Lisa was like, just do it anyway. And I like that yours is like, just don't do it.
Just don't do it. I mean, some things you have to do, right? So you have to make a decision. But like, as a parent, like you can walk around and be like, I don't know, what if I just don't do the dishes? What will happen? Probably actually nothing.
Right.
And in a leadership way, it's like, if there's something that someone is supposed to be holding and my inclination is to go in and help or do it or save them or fix it, what if I just don't?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like that. I think, and obviously not all the time and not in very serious matters, but yeah, for sure. Give yourself some grace and see what happens.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we're going to wrap up. I didn't get a chance to talk at the beginning because I forgot, but I am hosting an event for another podcast called Lesbian Chronicles. It's about coming out later in life. I've been a guest on the podcast, but I'm going to host a big live show for them.
Fun.
It's going to be really fun. I'm working on a location, so I can't announce it yet. It'll be in September. And I want anybody that's come out later or anybody that identifies as a queer woman or just wants to come hear this talk. It'll be really fun. I'm going to organize different events throughout the weekend for everybody. So I felt like I needed to mention this on the Pride episode, but I'll share more as I get to it. But anyway, cool. Patti, thank you so much for sitting down with me and taking the time. I know you've got a busy schedule in June, so thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This has been The Weekly with production assistance from Nick Patry. If you liked what you heard, rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at info@theweeklyseattle.com. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We'll see you next time.